Hello. Hello to you. Thanks for being with me. I'm Peter Moses with the Mindful Experience, and I'm just enjoying this moment. Let's take two mindful breaths together. Just pay attention all the way through the inhale and the exhale. Mindful practices travel with us, which is really good. Because wherever we go, it's here and it's always now. But the events that take place temporarily can be challenging sometimes in this world. And I know I'm not telling you anything. They can be hard to deal with when our emotions take over, when our thoughts become temporarily chaotic. And I have a story for you this evening, something that happened to me several years ago that I think could inspire you. It certainly did me. This was back in 1997 when Easy Pass was relatively new, and my children had been kind of on me to go ahead and get one of these transponders. I was kind of in resistance of that change. So on this particular date, I had not yet gotten the transponder, and I found myself on a major highway coming into a series of toll booths. And I was not particularly mindful of where I was and who was on either side of me. Happened to be a truck here and a truck there, rather large ones. And there was nowhere for me to go but into the toll booth that said Easy Pass only. I just didn't feel it was worth dying that day. So I went in and I stopped, and immediately there were cars behind me that had to stop and began to honk their horns. I pushed the button that said service, and I felt truly a very negative energy coming in my direction. And shortly after that, I heard this voice, and it said, "Here's another idiot." And I turned to look at, well, it was a man, but he didn't look human. He was so angry, he looked much more like a lizard. And his eyes were just full of rage. And he was really kind of cursing me up and down right at my window. And I, well, started to feel a little defensive. And I didn't know really what to say, but this was the thought that came into my head, and it was, who teaches you guys, you turnpike guys, public service? Because, I pushed service. I didn't push abuse. I was getting abuse. So that's what the thought was that came up in my mind. And I took a deep breath to tell him off. But interestingly enough, during the time it took for me to get that deep breath in, I found myself reflecting in a mind moment as to what that would sound like and what it would do for me to say those words. Who teaches you turnpike guys public service? It would have been like throwing gasoline on a fire. And I would have paid the toll all the way to the other side of the state. And all this happened in really no time. And by the time I spoke, the words that came out of my mouth were, I'm really sorry that you have to come out in these early days of Easy Pass for guys like me who didn't plan ahead as to where they were and which lane they took. So can you give me some advice? What shall we do? The cars are piled up behind me here. And it was as though he had never in his life heard anyone apologize to him, at least in this kind of situation. And he blinked, and after he blinked, I could see there was a human being there. And he didn't know what to say either. And then he stammered for a little bit, and he said, I've got a form. Take this, pull in over there, fill it out, and you'll be cool. And then he just kind of walked off in a daze, didn't say anything more. And I pulled over and I sat there for a moment, and I was so grateful and so amazed, really, that without any thought, that's what that's what came into my head. Those words, which really allowed me to speak with more compassion and kindness to a guy who really needed it. And it was really mindfulness in action. And it was not something that I had practiced. Back then, I was not so aware. But there it was. All it took was the deep breath and the pause and the right words and the right action happened. My screen right now is telling me, sorry, we're having trouble playing this video. Try again. So I'm going to press that and just continue because I was frozen there for a moment. So I wanted to share that story because it's meant a lot to me. And I've used it as a teaching story because it's really the perfect example of being in a really high stress situation and not reacting and getting myself in further trouble. And it was really not a trained response. It was just grace, really. And so I was so thankful. And maybe you've had a similar experience. But again, what it comes down to is recognizing that even if he looks like a lizard, he's a human being. And he's obviously in great pain. He's not behaving the way anyone would choose, probably including him. But it's not going to help anyone. It's not going to serve you or anyone else to tell him off, to just create more stress for everyone. And it's a tough thing to do. It's even tougher, let's say, with family or a good friend, when we're even more invested in that person that we're having a difficult moment with, because we care very deeply about what they're saying. But that's when we need to take that breath, or those 2 breaths that we took before, and just remain conscious and not go unconscious. One of you is already unconscious, and it's not you. So that leaves it up to us to hold the space until your good friend or your loving family member comes back. This could be a 3-year-old throwing a tantrum, totally unconscious. It's not worth, you probably know this, it's not worth trying to reason with that banshee down there screaming and kicking your shins. And it's the same way with an adult who's lost consciousness. So we all have this capacity. It's a beautiful thing, and it's a noble quest. And the more we experience success with it, the more it tends to happen for us. And the more we have a practice, like 1 or 2 deep mindful breaths before we speak or act, or the anchor breath, get into your body for a moment. Just don't feel as though you have to speak or act immediately. And that gives the frontal lobe a chance to reflect and for right action to happen. So that's my story for this evening. I'm always happy to share it. If you have a story and you'd like to commune with us at the Mindful Experience, or if you have any comments or questions, we work with children and adults. We play as well as work. And we're really all into empowering every human being with presence, with consciousness. And so I wish you a happy, ever-present now. And I hope to be with you again soon on a Monday evening meetup like this one. Be well.